I'm Paul Sullivan, your host on the Company of Dads podcast, where we explore the sweet, sublime, strange, and silly aspects of being a lead dad in a world where men, who are the primary parents, often feel they have to hide or at least not talk about their roles. One thing I know from personal experience is being a lead dad is not a traditional role for men, whether you work full-time, part-time, or devote all your time to your family. Parenting is so often left to mothers or paid caregivers. But here at the Company of Dads, our goal is to shake all that off and create a community for fathers who are lead dads and to welcome other dads who want to learn more from them. Today, my guest is Paula Ratliff, president of Women Impact Tech, which helps women thrive in the tech space. She's been doing this work for 20 plus years, and it seems, I hope at least, that we're at an inflection point, or at least an outrage point, where things might begin to change. Let this stat sit with you for a moment. Mothers get a 5 to 10% pay cut for each child they have, while fathers get a 6% pay bump per child. We're going to talk today about how fathers and men in general can step up to support working moms in the workplace, but also how companies need to look at the world of work differently in 2022 versus how they may have looked at it pre-pandemic in 2019. Paula, welcome to the Company of Dads podcast. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having us, Paul.
Okay, I got to get this out front right away. This is the first time I've interviewed a Kentucky colonel. You, Elvis Presley, illustrious Kentuckians. Tell the listeners what a Kentucky colonel is and how this came about.
So I was nominated for Kentucky Colonel right after I had held the title of Miss East Kentucky, a beauty pageant title, where I was advocating for the eastern part of our state, around the entire state of Kentucky, for advocacy on women and our place in the workforce. So I started really young. My mother was one of the working moms in the 60s and 70s, and I admired everything she did and continued to advocate for working women throughout my career.
That's wonderful. Now, do they know, am I not supposed to say that you now live in Indiana? Is that like against the,
No,
the Kentucky colonels live everywhere?
We do live everywhere. But even though I love the state of Kentucky, we had the opportunity to move just into a suburb in southern Indiana, still only 11 miles from Louisville, Kentucky, for schools. There's amazing schools in southern Indiana and a small town feel to crossing the bridge and moving into a little smaller community.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Tell me how you got into tech and how Women Impact Tech came about.
Yeah, so I spent 22 years of my career in staffing. And so early on in my career, we sold both traditional staffing for traditional work and administrative, clerical, and light industrial type of jobs. And probably about 3 years into my job, I learned that we had a technical division. I was interested in that division, and I started co-selling with a young lady that sold in my market for our technical side of the business. And very early on, I recognized there was this gender inequality. There weren't a lot of women in tech. So I was drawn to that and drawn to making a change and advocating for companies to really look at their tech department and bring diverse thinking into their departments around hiring women. Yeah. So I spent a large percentage of my career leading sales for our technical division of the company that I worked for. And after about 22 years, I decided to take a break from that type of sell and had the opportunity to come lead as the president for Women Impact Tech with a lot of the same mission, but really completely mission oriented, where we focus on creating a network for women where they, if they are the only woman in their tech department, we create networks for them in their community where they can network with other women who may only be the one woman on their team in their tech department, so that they can build a network where they can support one another in the technical space for advancing their careers. And then the other thing that we do, not only supporting the advocacy for women in tech, we create a culture for companies that are looking to advance their program and their community of technical workforce so that we can help them improve the statistics on their hiring. So we know that diverse teams produce better production of revenue results. So many companies, they do really great with setting D&I objectives for hiring women in tech, but often the execution is where they need some support. So we create environments where we can match our network of amazing female technologists to these sponsors to start to bring in more females in their departments, and then create leadership paths and a culture where they can really thrive in technology. So we've married those two things together. We do conferences in local communities where tech is a big hub. We do 6 of them around the United States, starting in San Francisco all the way to New York. And we do those throughout the year to really help both companies and women advocate and ensure that they have an opportunity to find a home where they can thrive in their career.
Yeah. When you talk about, doing this, so did the work start sort of the 90s, the 2000s, yeah. So you think about, and we're talking about here how, men can play a role, how dads, this is the Company of Dads podcast. If you're the only woman in the department, maybe you're leading the whole department, then you have a whole bunch of men reporting to you, or you're reporting up to a man. So when you look at it over your decades of experience in the tech space, when, and this is all, we'll start off pre-2019. When you think of examples of men, of dads stepping up and doing the right thing by their female employees and helping them to sort of, feel welcome, to appreciate the diversity of their knowledge, what are some of the examples that stand out of positive things that men and dads have done in the tech space?
Yeah, I will tell you, I think dads they were the first he's for she's, because they are the first to really understand how hard their significant other works in the home, and then to see them really execute successfully in the workplace. Most of them become advocates for their career success of their counterparts that are female. So I can tell you from my own personal experience, most of the he's for she's that sponsored me and helped me along my career journey had very strong wives at home. And they would often say, I don't see how you guys do it all. Like, their rock at home does everything, to keep the family going, to keep them organized. And even the males that I worked for that would often talk about how great their wives were, they were still actively involved at home, but they would admit that their counterpart did most of the heavy lifting in the home. So when they would see these women perform exceptionally well at work, they had a great purview into how hard they were working, both in their parental responsibilities in their home life, as well as in the workplace. So I think they were the first he's for she's in recognizing, if it was one woman in their department or multiple women in their department, they had an appreciation for how hard that individual was working after the working hours of the workplace shut down, where they often had the luxury to go home to their spouse that was a woman and carrying some of that heavy lifting. So I found my earliest sponsors in my career were working dads that had the, luxury of having a wife at home carrying heavy responsibility and a great appreciation for that responsibility at home and recognition for what that meant in the workplace and how much of a heavy load they carried.
How did that change though, as the years went on? Like, paint a picture of what it might have been like, pre-pandemic, 2018, 2019.
Yeah, I think pre-pandemic, we were all running hard. Like I can, in my own personal environment, we all were running at 100 miles an hour. And I think the corporation lost vision of, what that parental responsibility looked like. We really were focused on productivity and there, unfortunately, this has been corporate America for probably the last 15 to 25 years, where we were so focused on our results that there was very little effort taken to understand their work-life balance, the need for work-life balance. And the companies that did that, it was often lip service, right? The statistics you share around compensation is a great example. Women are certainly underpaid. Working women are underpaid in the tech department significantly and across the workforce. They're underpaid from a quality of pay, but they're also underappreciated. So we find, because so many of our counterparts are leading organizations that are male, women often don't even get a seat at a table in the tech department. And when they do get a seat at the table, it's almost a courtesy to tell them what's happening. They really don't have a voice when they sit at the table. And I hate to say that I was in an industry that was very heavily male dominated. And I found myself the only executive female in the room many times. And I would share great ideas and innovations that would drive business results, and it would fall flat. No one would pick up on the idea and get really excited about it. So I tell this story and people always laugh. I found a male counterpart that was a good sponsor, advocate for my work, and I would get him really excited about my idea. And I would say, hey, why don't you pitch that the next time we're in our quarterly meeting to see if it'll get legs and go anywhere. And every time he would take the exact same idea into the business room. And
would he give you credit for it? Would he give you credit for it afterwards, or?
Absolutely not. He would just talk about the idea and get everybody super stimulated, and then it would take off. And I loved that story in the aspect of, for me, it validated, oh my gosh, my idea had the, vision that I imagined, and it's going to be successful. But the sad thing is that I had to find a counterpart.
You didn't get the credit for it.
No.
It was pretty selfless of you when you think about it. It's pretty selfless that you were putting the company ahead and say, here's this guy, getting all the credit. And if you get all the credit, well, chances are you're going to get a raise, you're going to get a promotion, but it wasn't even his idea. And this is not like 1960. This is like the 2010s.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly, Paul. And sadly, I was still energized by that. It gave me validity, right? That imposter syndrome that women often have in the workplace, and feeling that they're not valuable enough, that they're not good enough, they shouldn't be there. And it's a horrible statistic. Like 80% of women have this imposter syndrome at some point throughout their career. And I guess you could say I was in a position where if I could pass my idea to somebody else and get validity that, oh my gosh, I do belong at the table, it's a great idea, that was enough to really inspire me to continue and be successful at my job. But that's what's happened even today with women, is they undervalue themselves. They know they need some flexibility around their parental responsibilities, whether that's the hours that they're working or the flexibility to be in and out. And so they accept that maybe they make a little less money because they need this flexibility to take care of their family or their elderly parents or whatever that responsibility is. And oftentimes women, we aren't the first to be as vocal as we should be about, not having equal compensation, about not getting that voice at the table that we deserve because we bring diverse ideas and thought. And so we undervalue ourselves, and we undervalue what we can bring to an organization because we need this flexibility and work-life balance that's not as essential for our male counterparts.
Yeah, I guess, but I would argue if the pandemic showed us anything, it's like, one, we could all work remotely, particularly in something like tech. I mean, you're not replacing somebody's heart where you actually have to be in an operating room. You can work in tech remotely. But two, I think it also showed us that, we're wasting an awful lot of time at work. We were yucking it up at the water cooler and whatever we're doing. And suddenly, like, we could be as productive or more productive while balancing. Now, terribly stressful, but, we could figure out, did the pandemic cause a rethinking or resetting, or let me not put words in your mouth. I mean, what did the pandemic do? What did those years, particularly the first sort of 18 months, what did it do for, working moms or working dads in tech?
Well, I think unfortunately you saw over 800,000 women exit the workforce during the pandemic. It was just a disturbing number of women that left the workforce. And I would argue they had to, right? Even if you had a balance in your life where you could send your kids to school. Now the kids were working from home on computers, and you really had to be attentive to ensure that they were getting that work done. And you became a co-teacher, quite frankly. And that was too much for women to manage the work and parental responsibilities of their children or elderly care of their parents. So there was a lot of responsibilities that women took on. But I also will say, as companies made decisions to downsize, as typically has happened in our history, women were one of the first to be cut from the workforce when jobs were eliminated. So it was a compounding problem of women needed this, some women, a large percentage, needed this break to be able to take care of their children or parents. And then you had this other, the other dichotomy of downsizing and women were cut. So, and they were in industries that were cut the hardest. So you think about the restaurant industry, hospitality industry, a lot of those areas that saw the deepest cuts were very heavily populated by female workers. So you saw, significant impacts to women during the pandemic. But as you said, companies should have learned remote working was fantastic. We could do flexibility because when people were working remote, you could track whether they were working evenings, days, nights, whatever they were working. And you would have thought that we would have come back with flexibility as king and with the ability to hire almost 75 to 85% of all the jobs in a remote environment.
Yeah.
But in tech, that didn't happen.
Why do they still want the person in the office? I mean,
I really wish I had an answer.
Is the person walking to the computer? No, the person's probably answering a phone saying, hey, or answering an email saying, hey, help me out here.
Yeah, and when you
talk anywhere.
Yeah, so when you talk to some of the tech leaders, what they're sharing with us is the innovation that comes from being together in an environment. They can get more done, the project type work, because there's shared responsibility around projects. They feel that can be more powerful when people are in pods or in groups. And some of the biggest tech names invested significant dollars into building out campuses to attract talent. Right. So I think it's still to be determined with the job market, the way the market is today, how many companies will stick to that and really continue to place the value on being in person, and how many companies will continue to put some flexibility in the scheduling and allow for more flexible workforce and for remote workers.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about men and dads needing to advocate for flexible hours, the ability to work from home, on-site childcare, and equal family leave. Because I mean, there's another part of this is that oftentimes, I mean, women bore the brunt of this, but oftentimes a man who wants to take time off to be a better father, to be a better husband, or is seen as less committed to work, and that's a ding against him. But when you look at this now in 2022, we're talking about sort of individuals and individual agencies, but we know that individuals can only do so much. I mean, are companies having these parent-friendly policies as beneficial to retaining their top talent, or as a perk to their employees? Or is it, kind of retreating to what you said, hey, look, we got these big campuses, we might as well fill them with bodies?
I think it's a little bit of both. So yes, we are seeing great benefit packages. I have never been so proud of working for and working hard for the tech industry as how I saw the tech industry respond to Roe versus Wade's, being turned over. I was so proud of that group coming forward for reproductive rights and offering travel and really burdening a lot of expense to offer women reproductive health care in different cities or states, whatever they needed. Tech did a great job and was at the forefront of coming out very vocally on what they were going to offer and expand their benefit package. So on that side and that note of it, I think they recognize to be inclusive with a female workforce, they've got to offer the right benefit packages to attract that talent. However, I do think that we didn't see as many remote jobs in tech that we'd like to see. There have been commitments to advancing women in tech by really large tech organizations, and the numbers are staggering. How they want to grow their percentage is such an improvement over what we've had in the past. And leadership is the area where we see, overall women have about 28% of the tech jobs, but they're usually lower jobs. And we'd like to see more women in in leadership jobs. So many companies have come out and they want to double their numbers, move to 20% female leadership over the next year to 3 years, which is amazing. But I think it's going to come with some cultural understanding of the flexibility that's required for women to thrive in their careers. And often what we see is women get these great opportunities and then they hop. They don't stay with one organization because there's not enough flexibility for them to be successful. They either leave tech and move into a different industry, or they end up going to a more progressive organization that has better benefits that are more flexible for women in leadership. So I think we're learning. I think the tech industry is understanding what it's going to take. It's just a little bit slower progress than we'd like to see, because if you look at the women that have been really successful, they've been given the opportunity to have flexibility in their scheduling. Their performance has given them that opportunity where leadership will kind of look the other way and give them the flexibility. It's not necessarily a blanket package that says, hey, we're going to give these benefits equally across our organization, but they certainly do it for their top performers. For us to make an impact and attract women into tech and attract more leaders in tech, we're going to have to be more public about what do the plans look like and how will the flexibility allow for them to have and manage their one life, right? It's not just work-life balance anymore.
That's my argument. It's your life and it's how you divide it up. And I think work-life balance, we all end up using the term at one point, but it's a bad term because you have life and then like, okay, some part of that life, I'm going to be working. Some part I'm going to be parenting. Some part I'm going to be, with my spouse or my friends, what have you. And it's your choice of how you allocate the finite number of hours you have.
And Paul, you know this, you were, you've had a great career. The top performers are going to be top performers regardless of what additional parental responsibilities they take on, because it's typically in their DNA. If you're a top performer, you're going to find a way to make it work, whether you create your own flexibility or convince your boss to give you the flexibility to get it done. They often will keep those top performers, but to draw in new talent and future talent, we're going to have to be more open to having those conversations about what top talent needs if they are a female and burdening additional responsibilities.
It's also in behavioral finance 101. It's sort of an anchoring bias. You see these top performers and you say, okay, that woman, she was able to do it. Look at her. She's whatever, early 50s, great career. But you don't know the full story. And you have those top performers now, future top performers now in their 20s, and maybe they're having children in their 30s, and maybe husband and wife are having a conversation as to what they want to do. And my argument is you don't have to worry about your worst performers because they're not going to leave. Nobody wants to hire them. It's that top performer. And as you said, they leave the industry, they go to a different firm, they finally get promoted and they say, you know what, you're a jerk all those years. I don't want to be here anymore. I'm leaving. And so to me, it just seems very, short-sighted. And so I'll ask you this question. You said, you for better or worse, you had men, sort of mentoring you in your career, but now that some women have come up in the ranks, in tech, are they mentoring women in a better way? Are they mentoring them in a different way? I think that this is, probably part and parcel of what you're doing with Women Impact Tech. But talk to me about how the mentoring has changed or how it could change if it hasn't.
No, it's a great question. And you're right. There are a few bad eggs. We have heard women who feel, I had to earn my stripes. And so I'm creating and, keeping a culture in my organization where you have to kind of earn the stripes. That's not really what we need to achieve the goals that we have for, improving diversity in the organizations. As women promote in their companies, they have to create a path or pave the way so that it's easier for women to advance and that they can appreciate and genuinely give them the opportunities to advance, knowing what they had to do and how many hoops they had to jump through, because many of them are unnecessary. So we do create a lot of keynote speakers and panelists that talk about helping to mentor and pave the way for our females that are starting in the career in tech, so that they don't get burnout and that they believe they can keep that one life balance that's necessary for them to be a great parent and a great employee, and be recognized that we appreciate they can be great parents and great employees, and have those very open conversations in their one-on-ones with leadership. And we talk a lot about the females using empathy in their leadership roles, which we know in business in general is one of the key drivers that's missing in a lot of leaders, and why you have a lot of employees leaving companies. So one thing that women can do is continue to use empathy for their fellow women that are coming up behind them, mentor, coach, and sponsor those women along the way in tech, for sure. And we give them a platform and a network of women to talk to, so that they understand it won't be every culture today, but there are many cultures in various industries that are driving tech today, and the digital, revolution that we're seeing. You're seeing great tech jobs in companies that aren't your traditional tech companies, but companies like Chewy's and companies like Bed Bath & Beyond that are really expanding. Carvana, companies that are really expanding their tech departments, where women can be at the forefront because they're great consumers of products. That's one thing women know how to do. We know how to shop. And so if we can enter the tech force in areas where we're seeing great opportunity and women can take leadership roles right away, I think that will help advance women in this space much faster than what we've seen in the past. Yeah. And I was thrilled. Women Impact Tech, we did our inaugural first year of honoring 100 companies that were not just talking the talk about what to do for equity and inclusion for women in the workplace, but these organizations were truly walking the walk. We checked very public areas for women and underrepresented communities to give feedback on what they thought about their culture. And we chose and what they were investing for diversity, chief diversity officers and leaders in diversity. Yeah. And of that 100, it wasn't just your typical 100 tech companies. It was companies like Chewy's and Bed Bath & Beyond, and, great companies that we don't always think of first and foremost when we think of tech, but there are opportunities for women that are endless in cultures that have made great investment for equity and inclusion for women.
Well, I think of those companies, I think, Carvana, obviously new, trying to figure things out. Chewy's, you mean like the pet
place, absolutely.
Yeah, I got dogs. And so, I understand that it's basically online. A Bed Bath & Beyond, who knows what's going to happen with those gigantic brick and mortar stores. However, you're going online, you're buying stuff. Is it easier, though, for the newer companies without this legacy, without this history, to say, hey, you know what? This is how we're going to do it. We're going to be more inclusive. We're going to realize that people have one life. We're going to try to get the best employees we can, and we got to give a little. We'll get more on the end. Is it easier for those newer companies, or in Bed Bath & Beyond's case, the companies in transition, than it is for sort of legacy companies where things have been chugging along fine?
Easier. I don't know that it's easier, but it certainly may come with less controversy from top leadership. Right? So top leadership have done things one way. They've grown their business in tech fairly successful. They've been very open-minded and innovative in a lot of areas. This is just an area where we need them to continue to focus and drive and take more of a leadership for other tech companies to follow.
Okay, great. Paula Ratliff, this has been a wonderful conversation. Thank you. I always give the last question to the interviewee, and I want to ask you this and give you the last word, and that is, if you look at companies out there that want to do better or are not doing better, if you could tell them 3 things that they could do to help working moms and lead dads who are working, if you could tell them 3 things that they could do to make it easier for those people to continue working in tech and still be productive, what would those things be?
The first thing would be flexibility. Allow flexibility, trust that if you are flexible, not just with whether you're remote or in office, but flexibility in hours, flexibility in their ability to get the work done and set goals for what needs to be accomplished, and allow your female employees to achieve that goal on their flexible time, that would be the number one thing. I think you would be amazed at what women will accomplish for you when you give them complete flexibility in their scheduling. And they're doing it anyway, whether they're telling you or getting it done. We are working the hours needed to be successful. So if that means we put our kids to bed and work 2 or 3 more hours in the evening, we're doing it anyway. So celebrate that. So offer the flexibility and celebrate the flexibility. The second thing would be create a culture where you are giving them a voice at the table. Women will bring the most innovative ideas, diverse thinking to your leadership group, diverse thinking to your boards. If you haven't got females on your boards, I encourage you to do that, because it will drive diverse thinking. It will provide you an opportunity to mirror the market that you're selling your products and goods and services to. If you don't have a female voice at the table, you're missing an opportunity to be more profitable as an organization. And then the third thing I would say is create a culture where you celebrate successes for women that are actually advancing their career and doing a one life, because it's hard. It's definitely a lot to take on and be a great parent, a great mom, and also be a great employee. But a lot of women are doing it, and they aren't celebrated enough. So I would say celebrate it and create a culture where they can feel celebrated and respected and valued.
This has been great. Thank you again to Paula Ratliff, Kentucky Colonel and President of Women Impact Tech.
Thank you, Paul.